Good afternoon. It is Friday, January 23rd, 2026. Today we're going to look at the passage of Scripture that has the second person who recognized the first coming of Jesus without needing an angelic visitation to point it out. And that person is Anna. In Luke chapter 2, verses 36 to 40, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, second edition, it says, Anna, a prophet, was also there in the temple. She was the daughter of Phanuel from the tribe of Asher, and she was very old. Her husband died when they'd been married only 7 years. Then she lived as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, but stayed there day and night, worshiping God with fasting and prayer. She came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. She talked about the child to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. When Jesus' parents had fulfilled all the requirements of the law of the Lord, they returned home to Nazareth in Galilee. There the child grew up healthy and strong. He was filled with wisdom, and God's favor was on him. It says a few things about Anna. It says that she was a prophet or a prophetess. She was known and had a reputation as one who spoke the words of God. She was not just telling about the future, not that kind of prophet, but the prophet that applies the words of God to the circumstances around her. If somebody wanted to know what God thought, they could ask Anna, and she was a reliable source of what God had to say. It describes that she was a daughter of Phanuel and even knew her tribe, so she had a good pedigree from the church. It also said she was very old, at least in her 80s, having lost her husband after just 7 years of marriage. That means at least 50 or 60 years of being a widow. And at this elderly stage in her life, she stayed in the temple, fasting and praying and worshiping. Kind of gives us a clue. We never need to pick on those who are at the church every time the door opens. They may know more about what God is doing than the rest of us. Here are Simeon and Anna, two elderly people that hung around the temple all the time, and they knew from God what God was doing that nobody else understood without having an angel come and point it out to them. She came up just as Simeon finished his prophecy about Jesus and talking to Joseph and Mary. Another divinely scheduled appointment. I kind of get the feeling Mary's going to have a lot of those through her life where God set things up to be at just the right time. And so she came up and saw the baby and immediately started telling everyone in the vicinity about Jesus being the answer to their long wait for the Messiah. I want you to imagine waiting your entire life for an answer to prayer. And when you're 40 or 50, thinking maybe you've prayed long enough and God hasn't heard you. When you're 60 or even 70, trying to remember how important it is to still pray. And here's Anna in her 80s or 90s, and she's been waiting her entire life for this answer, and then she recognizes that answer to prayer in that baby being held in Mary's arms. And she rejoiced, she worshiped, and she immediately began telling everybody in the vicinity how beautiful it is that God answered their prayer for someone to save Jerusalem. May you and I learn from her example and grow in our consistency, in our church attendance, in our worship, in our prayer. May we trust God and look for the beautiful and wonderful things He will reveal to us as we hang out with His people in His house, expecting Him to do great things. God bless you.